want to thank you two for being here tonight. Have I schooled you guys on any of the questions we're about to ask?
As
Have I
in,
given you answers, push you on an answer, or anything
No.
like that?
no.
Good.
No.
So the first thing is real quickly, both of you have put a lot of rounds down range. Chris, real quick, how many guns, how many rounds do you think you got down range there?
I couldn't tell. It's a variety from 6mm up to 416s.
Are we in the thousands?
Yeah, we're not. I've seen a few.
And Chase, you shot several disciplines.
I shot PRS for, quite a while. I think 3 or 4 years. I've got 3 top 10 finishes in the PRS and 8 PRS match wins. I've got untold amount of second and third places. And, and then ELR started to become a thing again, which that's my true passion. And, just this last year, I shot over 4,000 rounds at 375.
Okay, so we have some rounds down range. And between the two of you, each of you, when you compare a barrel or a platform and how it reacts to the shot, it's safe to say that you have a position of knowledge. Fair
Yes.
enough?
So,
I
I've shot 338 Norma for a long time. I've gone through about 5 barrels, and every barrel had between 3,000 and 5,000 rounds on it, and the majority of that was shot over 1,500 yards.
And in this test, one advantage you have with this rifles, you could note what it shoots like with and without the barrel. In other words, its response to you.
Oh yeah.
Now, Chris, you've also had the opportunity of not only shooting this barrel on your current 416, but you shot a few of our other rifles, and you've also seen our other rifles shoot.
Well, I saw a brand new barrel with 26 rounds come through, the structure barrel. I think it was a 375. That got my attention. And then I shot at SHOT Show this year. I shot a 300 Norma Magnum and a 375 myself. And I knew right then, after I spent some time behind it, that was the way I wanted to go.
Chase, if you could directly comment on your direct experience going from the original enabler platform to our barrel. What was your first shot impression?
All right. So the best analogy I give to people when I shoot the structured barrel is if you were to take a regular hammer and hit it on concrete, you get a residual vibration with it. And then you take a dead blow hammer and it just took, it's just, you don't get the resonation like you do in a normal barrel. It's dead. It's a totally different recoil impulse. My crosshair stays on the target. So when I shot, I had 338 enabler. I was shooting a 300 Sierra Match King to do the barrel break in because it was, cheaper bullets just to do that. And as I was shooting it, I'm shooting 140 grains of powder and, I'm shooting around 3,400 feet a second, and you're just expecting it to, push you off target significantly more than you do. And you shoot and your dot is, 0.6 of a mil over the top of your 1/4 inch dot at 100 yards. And again, you can't put a finger on it, so to speak. It's just, it's dead. And your ability to stay on target is a whole lot better. And of course, it doesn't get hot like a traditional barrel either, but we'll get more into that here.
Now, Chris, you also have shot a few rounds there. What was your immediate impression on how the rifle reacts?
It's a unique experience in the for a few seconds after you fire it, you're almost without words. I think the way, and I've described it to other people, is if you take as kids, we all grew up playing baseball. We had aluminum baseball bats. And you hit your baseball with an aluminum baseball bat as a regular barrel. A structure barrel is like hitting a baseball with a fine Louisville slugger. It's dead. There is it's a elongated impulse. And then it's really soft. very, very soft. Like I shot last week with a couple guys that had chassis systems in the 375, and I let them shoot the 416, and they're all like, "Wow, that has less recoil than my 375." I'm like, "Yeah." It's very hard to describe it, but it's there. It's a dead feel, and it's by far the best tracking rifle I've had.
Your ladder testing, Chase?
So I'm real big in tuning barrels. I actually tune barrels for clients all the time, and finding your node and pulse on your powder charge is extremely important, and it's separate from your seating depth, which gives you your final accuracy. So finding a node is going to give you a happy spot into which your gun is going to consistently shoot, give you a low standard deviation from shot to shot to shot, even over a prolonged period of time. So if you're on the edge of a powder node, if your barrel gets hot, it might pick up a velocity and pull you out of your node there. Well, what I was noticing is after I did my barrel break-in procedure, I did a 9-grain ladder test. That's way more than what I normally do. I typically have a pretty good idea of where most calibers are going to shoot just out of experience. So what I did is I loaded, I took my max charge, which is going to be about 144 grains of 50 VMG, and I just did half grain increments down for 9 grains. So I did an 18-shot ladder test. And just for meanness, I started 20 thousandths off the lands with 300 hybrids. And what I was noticing, let's say you take a traditional barrel. As your gun is jumping out of a node, it will move up and to the right with a right-hand twist barrel, okay? So even on paper at 100 yards, you'll start to see your groups walk. If you stay in a node, you'll kind of shoot in a knot in that particular area. And then as you step out of that node, your barrel changes frequencies with a different harmonic, and it will start to cause that barrel flexion to release the projectile at a different point as it is resonating, and it will climb up into the right. Well, what I saw, I think it was like the first 11 or 12 shots were in the same hole. I mean, a 0.3 inch group. It was barely over a quarter inch for a 338 over a dozen shots. That just, I've never, ever in my life seen that. And I've probably, done load development on many hundreds of rifles for clients over the years. And that's the first time ever it shot a knot. It didn't care the velocity, I saw my node trend normal, but the accuracy stayed. My point of impact shift didn't move until I think it was over 200 feet per second different before it actually had a slight point of impact shift. It moved about 3/4 of an inch up and to the right over 200 feet per second. And then once I started getting up really fast, I took my ladder test all the way to 3,520 feet per second on velocity. So, and it started out in 2,900s. So, I ended up having a 500 and change foot per second swing, and my entire 18-shot group was under 2 inches. Normally, I would expect 6 to 7 inches over that, even on paper at 100 yards on a test like that. It will climb out that much. And if you do it at distance, it'll be that much more exaggerated. But the matter of the fact is, I don't know what wizardry you put on your engineering, but the way that those I-beam structures, they don't have a traditional harmonic in it. As it steps down, you're killing nodes as they go down the barrel, and it doesn't have time. It doesn't resonate back up into the shooter. And so when I saw that, I knew there was something special about that barrel. Like that was one of the most eye-opening things I've ever seen developing a rifle. So,
Chris, you also did some ladder testing.
I did on the 416, 2855 feet per second up to 3,064. The interesting thing I found with the 416 was that there were nodes. The node was wide, but there's a node within a node, and that's where you could really. Some of my extreme spreads on the high end were like 20 feet per second on an extreme spread. but the group was like 5 shots was 3/4 of an inch. I mean, it was, and I shared it with somebody, and they said, "Man, that's a tuned load." And I'm like, "No," I said, "That's on the high end. That's not even the good stuff."
Chase, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you made a comment about where the rifle that you built there with our barrel, where it sat on your list of your accurate rifles.
So I had a David Tubb 5-star break with a tuning nut on it, which turned out that I never used it because I didn't need to. Okay. Mm-hmm. When I found my node, I ended up backing off the 300 hybrids down to about 3240 was where they shot really good, 3250 right there. And every 5-shot string was sub 10 ES. And I messed with my seating depth. And what I noticed is, and again, I had just started at a random, safe 20 thou off. And then, when I did my seating depth test, I did 10, 20, 30, and 40 thousandths. And all of them shot under a quarter minute once I found my node on my powder charge. It really didn't matter what I did with my seating depth. Now, if you do that on a standard barrel, you can see just at a 5 thousandths difference in your seating depth, you can go from 1/2 inch to 1 hole just in a 5 thousandths change. Yeah. Well, we're talking almost 45 thousandths difference in my seating depth, and everything for 5 shots shot under quarter minute, not a quarter minute. Okay. And then when I finally, I started doing 3 thou increments to really fine tune it. I shot back-to-back 5-shot groups that were under 0.1. You want me to go ahead and tell you what I did at distance, or you want to just stick with paper for now?
I am listening.
Okay. So, a little personal information. My dad has Parkinson's and Alzheimer's, and I don't have a whole lot of good time left with him. All right. On his birthday on February 15th, earlier this year, I got to take him out, and he's never once got to see what I'm capable of doing with a rifle. He's never been able to. Because of work schedules. And he finally got to come down and go shoot with me. So when I put the steel targets out, and he said, where are you shooting from? And I have a mobile shooting tower I hook up to my truck, and I deploy it, and we can shoot 2 miles in 360 degrees where I train people here in Central Texas. I pointed over there. I said, you see that shiny spot glinting in the sun? That's where we're shooting from. And the look on his face was like, he just couldn't even fathom what I was about to do. And my big deal is when I train as hard as I can on myself. So when I go into a match, it's a little bit easier. So the furthest target I had, but due to mud, I couldn't cross a creek to put target out any further on that particular side of the field. I put one out at 2,736 yards, and that was going to be my cold bore because, again, I always test myself and my equipment to its furthest ability on that day. So, I shoot, I see the target move, I shoot again, I see the target move, I shoot again, and I see nothing. And the wind was blowing, it was blowing pretty hard that day. It was blowing about 22 miles an hour from 4 o'clock, but it was staying inside of a mile an hour in my wind call. We end up going downrange, and I did go 3 for 3 cold bore. Was that in a sanctioned event? Of course, it'd be a new ELR Central World Record. So that was my first time taking your barrel out and shooting it at distance. And out of the gates, besides, I did do a velocity truing at Mach 1.2 about a week before that. But besides that, that was my first time to go out and actually test the rifle and my ability to shoot it. And, and we set an unofficial, what would have been a record. And I've got pictures of it. I can show y'all. I don't know how to do that while we're on the meeting here. It's on the phone, but I'll share that with the Tack on Facebook page. But that was my first experience with it. And then another time I had some guys out. We were out practicing, getting ready for a match, and just for meanness, I decided to go ahead and shoot that little pea shooter 338 at 3 miles. And I shot a 10-shot string, and I ran out of elevation. I didn't have my big Charlie that had 100 mils on it. I had one that had 75 mils on it, and I couldn't hold enough, so I was aiming at the sky, just seeing what it would do. And I shot 10 shots, and all 10 shots landed in about a 10-yard circle just shy of the target. So for it to hold that kind of accuracy out at 3 miles, which is 5,280 yards. I mean, that's, that's incredible that thing's grouping out there like that.
Now, how about another one that people question, and some people think that we're not telling the truth. What is the heat like in those barrels?
Go ahead with your experience, Chris. You're shooting a 416. Tell us how that one behaves.
So the other day, I actually went through just a mock test with a infrared laser, temperature gun, and I found that my chamber was cooler than my muzzle, and that was impactful for me.
Chase, you got a few rounds out there.
Oh yeah, back when I was getting that barrel tuned up, back in, what was that, February? It was already mid to upper 70s, and we could, I could shoot, 6-8 rounds down the barrel and grab it. And, in fact, again, I don't have my structured right now with me. It's getting a rechamber, but I could grab it here. Now, if I was to shoot this barrel on a 5-shot string today here in Texas, we're averaging around 100 degrees for a high. 5 shots, I grab it like that, I'm cooking my hand after a few seconds, literally. Like it's in the neighborhood of 150 degrees. It's very uncomfortable to touch. On the structured barrel, the one time I did give it one sustained string of fire for probably about 10 or 12 rounds, felt like it was maybe 80 degrees, maybe. Like it was warm, but it was not hot in any way, shape, or form. So, there's something to be said, the way you're pulling air in through this chamber. The muzzle brake is vacuuming cool air in, immediately. And it's always getting a fresh breath of air every time you pull the trigger, and it just does not heat up.
And with that heat, Chris, you've talked about Mirage.
When you got a 40-inch barrel, there's a lot of barrel there. Even with a 36-inch barrel with my red rifle, my 375 red rifle. The unique thing that I experienced the other day, while tuning, I could tell that I didn't have any Mirage off the barrel. When I was at 2 miles, it was unique. It was really unique in that the Mirage that I was seeing was at distance. I wasn't pulling it off my barrel, so my sight picture through my scope was significantly different, and it'll take you back the first time you see it, and in fact, it'll probably spoil you. Because I just had a clearer picture of what was going on downrange, and what I could see through my scope was significantly different than it was or is on my red 375 rifle that I've shot a lot in the past. The lack of Mirage, especially again on the 40-inch barrel, there's a lot to be said for that. There's a lot to be said for it.
As the barrels warm up, we usually see some kind of velocity drift. How are these barrels doing for velocity drift as you go on round count?
I like to tune either from the real hot side and work down, or start cold and work up. Sometimes it's a little unique when you start in the center and you go, it's almost like sometimes Chase and I have to do twice the work. What I saw was in line with, I'm using Vidwari 20 and 29, and it was in line with what the sensitivity, temperature sensitivity. But again, I went from 797 yards to 3520 in a short period of time. And what I saw was not drift due to the barrel. I didn't see that at all. Again, my last 4 rounds were probably, those might have been the 4 best loads I've done in a while, or the 4 best trigger pulls I've done in a while. I just didn't see the drift. I did not see the drift. I didn't see any stringing. That's another thing. I just didn't see verticals. And that's a big deal for EOR guys. That's a humongous deal. Lack of vertical is a big, big deal.
Yep. That's kind of everything, Chris, because what we're doing out there is, we hyper tune our rifles to the point where it's just a wind reading game. We're reducing variables down to the point where it's a wind reading exercise. We'll have a little bit, if we have a quartering head or tailwind and it wraps from 1 o'clock to 12, we have aerodynamic jump to deal with, but that's nothing to do with the rifle shootability. That's a physical phenomenon with, the bullet's behavior. But, the 27-36 3-for-3, it had 7 inches of vertical and it was 18 inches wide.
Yeah.
So like you said,
I just didn't see what got me is I didn't see the movement off of whatever I asked the bullet or whatever I asked of the rifle to do. The bullet impacted in the manner in which I expected it to do. So what that was telling me, again, going back to where Chase and I were talking about our plumb line, because he and I do the same thing, I'm sure, is that plumb line tells me everything I want to know. I really watch that plumb line. If the barrel's acting up or doing something weird, or my load's doing something weird, I'm going to start seeing fluctuations here and there and offsets. I just didn't see it.
Yeah, it's like at distance, when we paper tune at 100 because that's the flattest our gun is going to be. Our bullet's going to go exactly where we want it to. But when we get that lack of temperature sensitivity, so to speak, our guns don't walk at all. If I tell it to go 0.2 at a mile, it goes 0.2 at a mile. It's not, am I favoring too much on my dial or not? It translates exactly what we want it to.
Yeah. And Dale Dials and I were talking about that when I was on the ground and he was sitting next to me. He said the same thing. He said, it's doing everything that you were asking for it to do. There's something there, and I'm not smart enough to know what's going on with these things. It's a cool looking barrel. It's got a lot of hardcore sex appeal, I know, but
sure.
there's some juju going on there that I'm not smart enough to understand, but I can see it.
Sure.
It's easy to see, and it doesn't take a whole lot of time to see it.
To give you the last question then, and I'm going to start with Chase because I'm going to turn it back into truck stuff because he can get this. If I were to put into an idea of truck and horsepower,
okay,
and I said, Chase, if I were to give your engine an instant 10% increase in torque and horsepower, what would that be worth to you? So if I compare the barrels and said, okay, the ability to stay on target, a wider node, being more forgiving in the field on any given day-to-day application for charge weights, for temperature sensitivity of the powder, and so on. Mirage, the overall precision or the repeatability of the barrel. If I were to put that in a percentage, where would you say what our gain is over a standard barrel?
Okay, so let's talk about trucks for just a second, and I'll lead into the barrel. Okay, I'm real big into the diesel horsepower world. All right, my truck makes a little over 1,100 horsepower to the ground. I really follow a certain company called D&J Precision, and they have the strongest Cummins motor in the world. And it's a all billet machine block. It's a dry block. It doesn't have coolant going through it. So they're spraying it with nitrous and a GTX 55 turbo, and they're making well over 3,500 horsepower with this thing. And that's on a door slammer. So they are running low 4-second eighth miles at 176 miles an hour, 178 miles an hour. So last year they were running a wet block, more of a traditional style. The amount of money they have spent is probably knocking on 7 figures to get this one motor out the door just to shave 0.2 of a second off of the eighth mile to try to crack 3 seconds. So why would I even begin to hesitate spending a little bit extra money on a barrel over a standard barrel when I could go out and, let's just be realistic. I kind of expect my rifle, and I'm sure Chris is the same way. After what I've seen what this thing's capable of doing, I'm not trying to be arrogant. I just expect it to set a world record, if we're just being frank. That's the potential it's got. So am I going to scoff at a little bit more money? No, I'm not. Not even a little bit. You know,
So
the barrel's going to last longer. It's going to be more accurate. It's going to have better sustained rates of fire, staying without velocity migration, which that's monstrously important, but not to mention ballistic coefficient migration over a barrel being superheated or super cooled, totally different. All right. You know, the radar data shows that you might have certain barrels are going to behave different when they get superheated. You might get a little bit of a BC standard deviation increase on a superheated barrel. Okay. Well, you know, the structured barrels stay cooler. And after, like both Chris and I've experienced, we don't get that velocity or vertical stringing at distance. Now, is that vertical stringing due to velocity? No, because like Chris, myself, we pretty much data log every shot that goes out of these barrels in practice. We've got lab radar data showing, hey, you know, if we had a random bullet that was like 30 feet per second fast, I'm not going to worry about a shot that went over the plate. But if it's right there in the middle of it and then a bullet goes high, why was that? Is the BC different or was it low? Okay, did my BC drop out on a hot barrel? Probably so. But that just doesn't happen with these. So, you know, when you've basically removed the two biggest factors for a good water line at distance, you've removed the velocity and the BC variable, you know, there's no argument that can be justified to say, no, it's not worth it. It is worth it.
So
all things included, I mean, I would say probably a minimum 10%. Like I said, there's too much empirical data out there with these barrels right now that say that they are worth it. And I haven't heard of anyone that just came out of the gate saying, oh, you know, if someone shoots one of your barrels and say they're not worth it, you know, their word as a shooter is suspect. It's not the barrel, it's the shooter.
Yeah.
You know, I've got, you know, realistically, I've probably got 30 or 40,000 rounds downrange in the last decade, nearing a mile or more. And, you know, you learn how to pull the trigger in there at some point, and you know exactly when you made a good shot or a bad shot. And I'm sure Chris is the same way. You know, really, I don't really make bad trigger pulls anymore. I don't. You know, it's that many rounds are downrange. So, you know, and on top of that, I'm developing clients' rifles, getting them shooting. You know, if it doesn't leave shooting sub-quarter minute, I'm not happy. So we learned that it's not the trigger pull on our side anymore. When something bad happens, it's typically a velocity or a BC issue. So, you know, we, you know, I'm sure Chris is the same way. I mean, Chris, I haven't had any experience with 416. I've literally never pulled the trigger on one. But you might have even better data than I've got. I don't know, those bigger cartridges might be even more forgiving, you know, with the velocities and whatnot. So tell us your experience, Chris.
You know, velocity mitigation on a big bore, you know, you have some on the 375, and a lot of that's carbon, I think, and that's why I clean the barrel. I'm pretty unique about cleaning my barrels and keeping the carbon out.
Same way.
You know, with my red rifle, I was really successful winning the ELR matches. If you see a photograph, a lot of times I have my hand on the muzzle brake. Up underneath my hand was lead tape. I put lead tape on to put on my muzzle because I was trying to make it harmonically balanced. And I found after playing with it that if I put a certain amount of lead tape on it, I could make it more accurate at distance. But that took a number of rounds to figure that out. I would have to say that if I were going to put a percent on it, I'm going to say 10. I think that's a fair number. I don't think that's, if I said less than that, I think would not be honest. I think a 10% is a good number. You know, I really believe in it, or I wouldn't be using it.
100%.
I'm prejudiced, and I say that the barrel is the heart of the platform. Then you have an action. Then you have a chassis stock underneath it. But I've always heard that I can take kind of a crappy rifle and put a really good barrel on it, and she's going to pretty well you can get it to shoot. If I take a really great chassis or stock and put a crappy barrel on it, you're going to chase.
Yeah.
Looking for. Would you say, or would you agree with that? A barrel is the heart, not including the shooter. The shooter is the heart. But would you say the barrel is a main center of a full platform?
It's I would have to say that between the barrel and the chamber and the concentrate, as long as it's chambered properly,
Yep.
you can have a great action. You can have a $3,000 Barnard or whatever. And if you have a bad barrel, I would have to say that it's pretty high on the food chain as far as importance. But it goes in combination with a lot of things. I guess barrels are like tires to me on race cars.
Or race cars.
Absolutely race cars. And a barrel to me is just a set of tires. We're going to go through a barrel and we're going to put a new set of tires on a race car. But if you put a bad set of tires on a dragster, it's not going to go down the track.
That's right.
If you put a bad barrel on your F1 416 or whatever, you're not going to go down you're just not going to go down the track.
Chase, would you agree with those statements?
Yes. So, like Chris mentioned, your action is pretty dang important, obviously, but let's just face it, not a whole lot of ELR actions out there that live very long. They pretty much kill themselves. So what's out there, typically pretty good, for what's available. So at that point, you've got a combination of a gunsmith that's capable of making a good chamber and making it to the face of the receiver. But that barrel, your receiver is always the same. Your chassis or your stock's always the same. Your scope's pretty much always the same. What's the big what if? All right. It's your barrel ammo combo. Okay. Chris, did you get good shooting ELR by sitting at the reloading table or going out and shooting?
You can lose a match, an ELR match at the reloading table. You can't win one.
That's dang right.
The guys are too good now. You got to spend time behind it.
That's right. You've got to shoot at the end of the day.
This is a very good barrel. Dan Warner built the rifle for me, and it fouled out very quickly, which was good. It's not a heavy fouling barrel, which is an important thing for us.
Sure.
And it broke in very easily. Every barrel's a little different. I'm looking for ultimate accuracy, and again, that's why I wish you luck, Chase. But buddy, I might have something for you.
I tell you what,
I can't wait. It's probably the most excited I've been.
Good.
But we'll just have to see, buddy.
Well, I can post this, right?
We all do well, but the interesting thing, though, John, is that I don't see when we compete. I don't see me competing against Chase or Mitch or Todd, or I don't see it that way. I may be
yourself.
But what I compete against is I know Chase is still working. I can see he's in his shop. And he just pushes me to work a little harder. And that's where I think if you say that there's 10 really good guys, or whatever that number might be, we've all made each other a little better.
That's right.
That's really what competition's about. We're probably all doing 9 out of 10 things the same way, or pretty damn close.
Mm-hmm.
And what's funny is we've all stumbled upon this information without talking to each other.
Yeah.
You've got the right mindset, though, because I don't control anything other than what I do.
Yeah.
Right behind that little button right there.
Yeah.
I control my process, both I'll go in my reloading room here. I'm up here at the shop. I've got my reloading room here. I've got a process that I'm very, very particular with in here. All right. I control that. and then I control the fundamentals on my rifle. Other than that, I don't care who I'm shooting against. I can't read your wind for you. I can't press that trigger for you. You know, I love you to death, but you know, like, you know, I'm going to hug your neck when I see you, but I know me and you are both, we're there to win, you know, and our mindset is what, you know, I think makes us exceptional ELR shooters.
I do think, Chase, that, and I've told John this before, you know, again, you take those really core guys, we're always trying to find how to get that maybe 1% better, but just a little bit more efficient or whatever. I think the barrel in years to come, it could be like a Sam Colt moment. It really, I think, could change, especially because I'm former military, former Ranger. You know, I see this as a military type, you know, product.
Yeah.
It should be in those guys' hands. Well, that's where it really matters. You know, we do this for fun and or for whatever, but that's where it really matters is when the you know, the leather meets the desert per se.
Yep.
Well, guys, I can't thank you enough for your time tonight.
I'm completely computer illiterate, and I haven't owned one in 15 years. So there we go. I guess I can do this.
Look at that eye candy.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Chase loves those chassis. You need to come over to the dark side. If you ever shot one of these, Chase, you'd throw that chassis away.
Hey, I tell you what, Chris, how many sub-minute groups do you have at 2 miles with that setup?
She shoots pretty good, buddy.